So we know you have options when exploring repairing or replacing energy recovery components. So why should you consider Airxchange as a potential partner? Well, first and foremost, we have a dedicated support team. This market isn't an afterthought for us. It's a dedicated business model, and as such, we have the resources and the products to support it. So in regards to those products, the Airxchange design is the lightest and most compact in the market. So when you're dealing with the confines of an existing space, not only within the mechanical space, but in the unit itself, the overall size and weight becomes a very big deal. So we took what was already the most compact heat exchanger and developed kits that further improve the maneuverability and the scale of design to make the process a whole lot easier. Also, by choosing to use standard products with customizable features, it allows us to be very competitive from a pricing structure, especially when you take into consideration other manufacturers where you may be dealing with a one-off custom style product, which has a tendency to get real expensive real quick. The Airxchange design itself offers features that no other manufacturer provides. We have our patented segmented design, which we feel is the industry's easiest way to maintain and clean the heat exchanger. So not only does this extend the life expectancy of the device, but it also allows you to regain any lost performance over the lifetime of the HVAC unit's operation. We use a synthetic media in the segment design that allows you to permanently bond the desiccant to the material itself through a mechanical bond. This means that the desiccant can never actually separate from the media. And lastly, we use a fully welded stainless steel wheel and hub, which increases the life expectancy and also really gives the design the rigidity and strength it needs to last in very demanding airstream applications. And we also offer an industry-leading warranty on all our products. And this goes right into our OEM products as well as our replacement products. So after the new component is installed, we offer a standard 5-year warranty on the entire cassette, which includes the belt as well. We cover everything except for the motor, which has its own manufacturer's 18-month warranty. So we really stand behind the products. Okay, so let's dive right into developing a proper replacement process here. So let's say you're on the job site and you're looking at mechanical repairs. You open up the air handler cabinet door and you see a seized energy recovery wheel. Chances are your initial reaction is probably going to be, first and foremost, what is this thing? It's huge. This is going to be crazy expensive to fix, and probably I have no idea how I'm going to fit a new one of these in here. And I'll be honest, that's a very normal reaction. So let's discuss that reaction by breaking it down into smaller bite-sized chunks. Okay, so the first step is to identify whether the component is a good candidate for repair or replacement. Okay, so you should be asking yourself right now, what's the general age of the equipment? A properly maintained energy recovery component has a lifespan of usually 15 to 20 years. If the device has never been maintained, it most likely could be substantially less than that, though. You should be asking yourself, is the device functioning? And just because the device is spinning doesn't necessarily mean it's functioning. You have to be sure that you're achieving the desired airflows, the correct pressure drops, and overall general effectiveness of how well the device is performing for you. You should be asking yourself, is the device mechanically sound? Are there any mechanical deficiencies like missing heat exchange media, rust, corrosion, media plugging, belt breakages, seized bearings? And lastly, if it just appears dirty, can you properly clean it? Now, that may seem simple, but in a lot of cases, it can be very, very difficult. So the general rule of thumb is the older the device and the more no's that you answer to these questions, the more likely you're going to be in a replacement scenario. Okay, so here are some visual cues of wheels in various states of disrepair. So the question you could ask yourself is, do any of the components that I'm looking at look like what's in these pictures? Each of these pictures demonstrate, severe corrosion, plugging, mechanical failure. And what I'm trying to get across here is it's usually pretty apparent from a visual inspection when a device has exceeded its operational lifetime. Now, I've given previous webinars on the maintenance and repair. So this one's really going to focus on replacement. So let's say you have identified a potential component that looks like one of the wheels in the last slide that needs to be replaced. Now, what's going to be your next step? So the first thing that you need to keep in mind is that regardless of material, size, orientation, these devices are all trying to accomplish one thing, and then that's to condition the air. And since this device is in an existing system, the most important aspect of the replacement project is to start off by trying to match the original performance of the original design. And you want to do this so that the system can operate as it was initially intended. So this would include the sensible performance, the latent performance, pressure drop, and leakages that are associated with the device. So right now, as a customer, you may be asking yourself, Chris, am I really supposed to know all that? And no, absolutely not. That's actually why we're here. We've been manufacturing these components for over 40 years and really have managed to procure a diverse library of information that really not everyone is privy to. So you would bring this information to us. And I may pause between slides. I'm just kind of waiting for them to load on your end. So the first step you should do is request and fill out a replacement form, a replacement component form. It's a one-page form with information that should really be available just by viewing the component. So believe it or not, this form will get you about 80% of the way there when developing a proper replacement strategy. And really, it should only take a few minutes to complete. You would then send that form back to us, and we would begin researching the best suitable replacement that would best match the original design. Now, keep in mind that while we're researching the options, the intent is to match the original performance, but we often find a higher operating alternative, a more efficient alternative that may be used as well. So we'll use that in our communication with you during these projects. So keep that in mind as you move forward. Oop, sorry, I think I went past. Okay, so with this information, what we can provide is a performance submittal. We will give you options, size ranges, and we'll work with you to determine the best, the most efficient way to move forward. We will provide shop drawings, and that's both on the entire assembly as well as skid dimensions and weights, as well as sub-assembly dimensions and weights, electrical information. We also provide assembly instruction documentation. So we'll give you all the information that you need to make an adequate determination on how to move forward. This is really all vital information that you can use to develop begin developing the right strategy moving forward. So the following step is going to be to determine the manner of egress. So most mechanical equipment is usually not in the most accessible of areas. Energy recovery components are no exception. So you would need to take note of receiving areas, hallways, doors, hatches, elevators, stairwells, and really any other subsequent choke point that could hinder the transport of the equipment from the receiving area to the assembly area. You should also be aware of how you're going to get the new component into the air handler. So you would take note of the orientation of the air handler and how the air partitions are set up. You would also want to document the access panels and any doors that the equipment has to go through. And why is this important? Well, it's important because the next step that you're going to take is to identify which product is going to best suit this particular replacement project. So after you have an understanding of how the equipment's going to traverse the building, and I'll be honest, every application is completely different. Depending upon your particular situation, we're going to have different products that are available to you. And I just would like to point out that regardless of what type of product you choose to use, it all comes with our standard design, our standard segmented design, as well as our standard warranty. So we have 3 different products available depending upon your particular situation. The first is our site-built kit. The second is the fully assembled sliding cassette. And the third is segment replacements, which is really specific to an Airxchange design. And now I'm going to kind of dive into each of these options in more detail really quickly. So the kit is by far our most popular way to replace an existing wheel. So you might be asking yourself, when does this make the most sense? It makes the most sense in application where manners of egress are limited and the space that surrounds the mechanical equipment is limited as well. The design philosophy behind this particular design is we wanted all the pieces to be able to fit through a standard door and to be assembled by 2 assemblers. So we wanted to make it light enough and compact enough where you can actually maneuver it through the space. In almost all cases, this completely eliminates the need for a crane or any type of building modification or air handler modification. Now, this is a pretty big deal, and I don't want to understate this. And it's because with monolithic wheel designs, typically you're looking at removing maybe sections of the building or sections of the roof in order to get the component to where it needs to be. Also, the monolithic designs require a considerable amount of rigging and preparation that needs to be included in that process. So it adds a lot of labor and cost to it. The kit is available in diameters ranging from 58 inches to 165 inches, which equates to roughly 4,000 to 65,000 CFM. So we have a wide product range. So depending upon what you see in the marketplace, most likely we have an option that's available for you. The structure of the design uses all standard fabricated parts, and the benefit of that is it cuts down considerably on the lead time and the cost. However, even though we're using a standard design, the performance of these devices can be tailored to any application. So in the most cases, we can match, I would say in almost every case, we can match the performance. And in many, many cases, we can actually offer better performance than what was existing. And lastly, we ensure that the device operates before we ship it out of the factory. So this adds, comfort in knowing that the design is going to fit together properly and it's going to operate the way properly. Each component is fully assembled and tested at the factory, and it's then subsequently broken down for shipment. So to demonstrate the process, I'm going to show you a quick time-lapse video. And you can see some of those design features that I spoke about earlier being employed in this particular video as well. And yes, that's really how fast our technicians work. So if there's one word that I like to use in this particular video, it's flexibility. We like to give everyone options. Okay, so the next option is the slide-in replacement. So when does this one make the most sense? So most of the OEMs that use Airxchange build our cassettes into a track system. And the benefit of that is typically you can slide them in and out of the cabinet quite easily. So in the majority of the cases, when you need to replace an Airxchange design, you simply slide the old one out and slide the new one in and plug it in. And it's kind of that simple. Also, now because Airxchange has a tendency to be smaller and more compact than other manufacturers, our assemble design has been used quite successfully when replacing other manufacturers. Now, size does become an issue at a certain point. So slide-ins are usually generally used between 25 inches in diameter to 74 inches in diameter, which equates to roughly 500 CFM to 13,000 CFM. But they can go bigger if you're not concerned with the added size and weight. Once again, just like the previous slide, the structure is standard, but the performance can be tailored to any application. Also, the cassette goes through the same number of tests to ensure operation prior to shipment. And because there's no added labor to assemble that component on site, it cuts down on the cost as well. And lastly, as I mentioned earlier, the segment swap is only really an option if you're working on an Airxchange branded wheel. So, unlike monolithic wheels where there is no mechanical, when there is no mechanical damage to the segments, if you have an Airxchange wheel, you most likely can just take the individual segments out and follow our standard cleaning procedure, which is essentially just soaking the wheels in a soapy solution. By doing that, it allows the wheels allows the degreaser in the solution to remove any sedimentation over time, and it brings the segment back to original performance. So when do you typically replace them? Well, let's say one's been damaged. For giggles, someone went up there and put a foot through it. So in those particular cases, you have the benefit of the Airxchange design where you don't have to replace the entire wheel. You could just physically just replace that single damaged piece. So you're only servicing what needs to be servicing in that particular manner. It's a great option to have. And our segments range from 25 inches in diameter all the way up to our largest, which is 156 inches in diameter. Okay, last step. After you identify the appropriate performance and match the product that best suits your needs, the next step is going to understand how much labor is going to be required to complete the project. And I get asked lots of questions about this particular part of the process. So it really can be broken down into 3 separate steps, which is the disassembly and disposal of the old device, the transport and assembly of the new component, and flashing and startup of the new component. Okay, so in most replacement projects, the removal of the existing device is the part that most people have the most concern about. So based on experience, the removal and disposal of the existing component usually takes 1 to 2 days to complete with 2 people. The rule of thumb that I personally like to use is if the component is physically smaller than you, you're looking at more of a day to complete the removal. And if it's larger than you, physically larger than you, you're most likely looking at 2. The removal process isn't very technical. The best tools for the job are common hand tools like wrenches, grinders, and sawzalls. My recommendation is to remove the old component in sections that are small enough to be manageable. And this would also include the old frame as well, as you can tell from that picture. Now, I get asked a lot, why can't you replace just the wheel? And it really rests in the fact that these are moving components. They have extremely tight tolerances, and since there is no design standard, industry design standard, there is no guarantee of proper fitment. So in my personal experience, I've seen institutions and people try to save time and money by trying to do this by just replacing the wheel, and I can't really think of a single time where it actually accomplished their goals of saving time and money. It usually was the opposite. The transport and assembly of the new component usually takes 1 to 2 days to complete with 2 people. Once again, the new component may come completely assembled or broken down into pre-tested sub-assemblies that are assembled on site with common hand tools. And lastly, there's going to be the flashing and the startup. Once again, because there is no design standard, there may be some dimensional differences between the old component and the new, which requires a small bit of sheet metal flashing. Any dimensional differences will be communicated and demonstrated during the initial performance selection and review. And I just like to state that the flashing is merely to block the air. It's not structural in any manner. So typically some bent sheet metal with some tech screws is more than satisfactory. The new component will come with a new motor, so it will require some new wiring. In the majority of cases that we're involved with, the original starter is usually more than adequate. It's only in very rare cases we have to change that out to something that's compatible. So some typical rules of thumb when planning for replacement energy recovery components. For the majority of the projects, we recommend having 2 to 3 people available for the removal and assembly. In most cases, we find that adding more people doesn't usually cut down on the labor or time, and that's because of the tight space constraints of the cabinet. You can only really fit so many people into some of these small spaces. Now, there are certain cases that where more bodies you throw it at, the quicker the project's going to be. But those are usually projects where there's multiple wheels being replaced and you can work on them at the same time. But the rule still remains, you typically still want 2 to 3 people per unit. Due to the lighter weight of the devices, in all cases, it eliminates the need for a crane on site and any structural air handler modifications that need to take place as well. The majority of the heavy lifting is really in the removal of the existing component. So for the majority of the projects we're involved in, it usually takes, once again, 1 to 2 days to disassemble and dispose of the existing wheel component. The new wheel components, once again, typically takes 1 to 2 days to assemble. And lastly, for the startup, once again, 1 to 2 days. And basically, after you're done buttoning up the job, we would offer our standard warranty on the complete design. So I'm going to go through some more recent project profiles that were successful, that kind of incorporated all the designs we spoke about, as well as the process that we spoke about previously. So starting with the Wentworth Institute of Technology, these wheels were about 6 feet in diameter, and I'll be honest with you, that's the size wheel that really makes up the bulk of our replacement projects. A lot of people think only replacing wheels that are these huge monster beasts, and that's not the case. We replace a lot of wheels that are, I would consider, small to medium sizes. Another thing I'd like to mention is that a large percentage of our business is repeat customers. So, and that's what goes for this project as well. So the contractor purchased a couple of wheels to replace some older wheels, and it worked so well for them, and the university was so happy with the performance that they got, they came back for a second round of wheels. So it was a really good solution all around. One of the biggest obstacles is the building itself was located in downtown Boston, in a very busy section of the city. If you're from the area, the Boston's busy everywhere these days, but due to the traffic, the equipment had to be light enough and compact enough to be offloaded quickly. And a crane was completely out of the question. It would have just blown the budget completely out of the water. The wheels themselves were located on the 7th floor mechanical room, so there's limited egress to that area. It had to go through a hallway, up an elevator, and around some very tight spaces around the piping. Another obstacle in this particular case was the air handler cabinet itself. This was an over-under design, so you have that large structural steel and the small half doors on these air handlers. So they had to be able to get the new wheel inside these existing doors without any type of modification to the unit. So that was another thing that we had to take into consideration when we were coming up with a solution. So the wheels that were chosen to be replaced were 74 inches in diameter. So we were able to fit a 74-inch wheel through a door that was less than 30 inches wide. So it's once again, flexibility in the design. The 74-inch wheel was roughly 8,000 CFM. The old wheel and cassette frame was removed, and we provided the cassette in partially assembled subassemblies that were, small enough to get inside the air handler cabinet. So what made this project so successful? Well, one of the things is this project, we actually were able to offer better performance. So we offered a wheel at a lower pressure drop than the original, which is great because it helps give them some additional fan savings, as well as a higher efficient operating device. So they're getting more sensible link performance out of the device. The project also required zero modifications, meaning that they didn't have to open up a wall or cut the air handler open or any other modifications that would have added cost and labor. The project itself took 2 days to complete from soup to nuts, so the project went by pretty quickly. Now, since this is in Boston, the savings are largely on the heating side, but the fully operational wheel saves 3,700 therms annually. The equipment cost came in at $9,000. Based on the location and operating efficiencies in the schedule, the wheel saves around $5,000 annually. And the project was also awarded a pretty generous utility rebate based on the gas savings that were submitted to the utility. So based on the cost of the equipment and the rebate dollars, the simple payback on the equipment was less than a year. So very successful project. Customers are very happy. So that was a split wheel application, our kit design. Now I'm going to go to a fully assembled slide-in application. So for Green Rock Correctional, this project is a great example of an assembled slide and cassette done right. So it was, let me go back here. It was located in a more rural area in a facility that operates 24/7. Downtime was the biggest concern for the application. The original wheel failed due to severe delamination, so you can actually see the large sections of loose heat exchange material present. Similar to the previous project, the original design was monolithic. However, in this application, the air partition was vertical, allowing the old cassette to be slid out in its entirety. The units were also on ground level access, which made accessing them really simple. So due to the smaller sizes and weight and the relatively ease of access to the unit, it was decided that to replace the original wheels with slide-in replacements. The two cassettes used in this project were 58 inches in diameter, and the other was 74 inches in diameter, which equates to about 5,000 and 9,000 CFM respectively. So once again, this project was a great successful project, and it didn't have to be a monstrous wheel to do it. Both units were installed in a day, and it required no assembly on site. So the project went by really quickly. Essentially, they slid the old one out, slid the new one in, installed a bit of sheet metal flashing, and wired it up, and it was good to go. So these units were located in an area of the country where there was a good amount of cooling and heating savings. So when you combine the two together, it yielded about $14,000 annually in operational savings. The cost of the new cassettes were roughly $12,000. So comparing the cost of the equipment and the saving yields a simple payback of a less than a year on the equipment. So what I'm really trying to demonstrate here are slide-in replacements are kind of a fantastic way to minimize cost and labor as long as you have enough access to the unit and the size and weight of the cassette isn't a burden. One of the things you may be asking yourself now would be, couldn't I just go back to the original equipment manufacturer and do the same thing? And yes, you absolutely can. But really what the opportunity here is now you can replace these older monolithic wheels with a segmented design that can be effectively cleaned and maintained over time. So it's a real opportunity from not only if you're a building owner or a building operator to maintain your performance, extend your life expectancy, but also in terms of servicing the equipment. If you're a service contractor, you have the ability to effectively maintain that performance as well for your customer. All right, I'm going to breeze through this next one. So you may remember from a previous slide where I said wheel-only applications aren't a good idea. Well, I'm going to backtrack on that just a hair and say, well, in certain situations you can do it successfully, but these are very rare cases. This particular application was for a very large wheel. The project was at the ATT Headquarters, Miami. The building itself was 6 stories tall with a wheel located in the penthouse. It was very inaccessible. You had to go through an elevator up around a galleyway. It was very difficult to get to. So in this particular case, we did a site visit and determined the best way to do it would be to replace the wheel, keeping the original frame intact. This particular project, let me see here. This particular project, one of the biggest obstacles was the minimal downtime. So everything had to be completed before the start of work on Monday. So show up for work on Saturday and have everything completed before the Monday start time. So what was the outcome of this project? From soup to nuts, the wheel was operational over the weekend, and this was divided into 2 8-hour shifts. Because this wheel was so large, it was doing a ton of conditioning for the building. So the fully operational brand new wheel reduced the air conditioning load by 130 tons. The cost of the new wheel was $45,000. And based on the building operating efficiencies, utility rates, conservatively, the annual operating savings is, roughly $28,000 a year. So this equates to a simple payback of 1.6 years. And also, this job, I should say, was submitted for an energy rebate at FP&L as well, which would further enhance that payback. Not a bad little project that can be completed over a weekend, and now the owner has a device that they can adequately maintain. So once again, I went through a lot. So I think the most crucial element that you walk away from this is where do you start? And you start here. You start by filling out the replacement wheel form. As I mentioned before, just some very basic information gets us about 80% of the way there. Afterwards, we'll research and communicate with you what we think the best solution is moving forward. Each project is going to include a set of deliverables. A comprehensive breakdown of the performance, dimensions, weights of both the fully assembled component as well as any of the subassemblies. We'll provide detailed assembly instructions that outline the specific parts and steps of the assembly process. For split cassettes, we're going to include time to have a factory member on site. And this is really to guide you through the assembly process and demonstrate the tolerances and everything's being built at factory specification. And lastly, all our products are going to include our standard 5-year warranty. With that being said, I just want to end this kind of conversation with the fact that we really want our wheels to spin for a very long time, and we're going to support these devices throughout their life cycle. So once again, thank you very much for being with us this morning. I hope everyone is enjoying the holiday season so far. I don't know about you all, but I blinked and summer was over and Christmas is here. So I'm hoping you all have a happy and safe holiday. And I'm going to open up the chat box. So if you have any questions, feel free to type them in right there and I'll be happy to answer them for you. So thank you once again. Thank you very much. What are the most common culprits of damaged wheels? That I would say is pressure drop. Okay, and pressure drop is usually a function of how dirty the wheel gets. So, as a wheel operates in an airstream, and anything in an airstream over time gets dirty. So, coils, filters, wheels, and plates are no exception. If they start to develop pressure drop, and it's usually a case of the sticky stuff in the air. So, it's usually a case of oils, tars, VOCs. Depositing on the media, and that presents itself basically a substance for particles to deposit on. So dust starts to build up. And as that pressure drop increases, it places a burden on everything. It places a burden on the frame, the media, as well as considerably drops the performance. So, keeping a close eye on that is very important. And it's also part of the I don't know if you're involved in my previous presentation on preventative maintenance, but it's also included in that as well. So if you're curious about that, feel free to pull up that video on our website, and I kind of talk about that there as well. And actually, you know what, I'm just going to go extend on that conversation a little bit. So what does that mean in terms of damage? So typically what I see is damage to the media. So what happens is as the pressure drop starts to go up, the two most common failures I see on the marketplace are sections of the media that actually start to protrude out of the wheel. And that usually gets bound up in the rotation, causing significant and catastrophic failure. Or it causes the wheel to tilt in the airstream. So the bearings start to lose their tolerance. And as it starts to tilt in the airstream, the face of the media gets bound up on the seals, and then it destroys the face of the media. And there really is no good way to salvage that after it's gone through that process. Okay, so the replacement wheel form is on our website under our aftermarket section. I will say that you're coming in at a kind of a unique time, and it's because we're just about to launch a new website. So I'm not exactly positive where it is on the new website, but I will have our marketing people put together the appropriate links so that I can send whoever is involved in this this presentation the appropriate links right now and also moving forward, so you know where to find it. And also, I just want to say, if if you do have questions and if you think about something afterwards, I am accessible. Please feel free to. I'm here to answer questions. Feel free to email me or give me a ring. I'm happy to learn about different projects and things that you maybe can taking under into consideration when looking at potential refurbishments and replacements in the marketplace. Okay, so the question is, I'm in Lansing, Michigan. Do you have a rep in my location? Actually, for replacements, we do factory direct report. So I am your rep. So I would work directly with you. We work directly with building owners, sales reps, and contractors. And it's usually because it's a very unique project. It's a project that most folks don't undertake all that often. And for those projects, we will work with you directly on those. All right, any more questions out there? Once again, don't feel like you have to do it right now. Shoot me an email afterwards, give me a ring afterwards. I'd be happy to answer anything you may have. If that's it, I think I'm going to close down the presentation. I just wanted to say thank you very much once again for you all being here and taking time out of your day, and have a happy and safe holiday season. Thanks again.